Hi guys, and welcome back to Chaos at NoAH. So, yeah, I don't got much to say about last time. Still, well, I mean, last episode was mostly just cryptic stuff and then Takumi running away, so don't really got much to say at the moment, but, I assume we're at the tail end of chapter 4 here, so yeah, maybe I could have gotten it done last episode, but yeah, let's just see what happens. Suddenly, the conversation I was having with Vess transitioned into something completely unrelated.
いいえ世界を見渡してみてこんな場所他になかなかない
Are you just the Rei Ayanami of Chaos Head? Like that's kind of a more fitting comparison now that I think about it. Did this have something... Oh, whoops. Did this have something to do with these swords? If not, then I didn't care. I had to somehow find a way to get Fess to tell me how to get my hands on a real D-sword.
新宿でも池袋でもなくて渋谷この街の名前が一人歩きしてしまうくらい
Both in front of and behind me, the same words were being spoken from the two Fesses at the exact same time. So, is the fake Fess a confess? Perfect synchronization. It gave me a somewhat strange feeling. Had Fess split in half? Were both of them the real Fess? Or were both of them imposters? Dun 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 doo doo.
日本中の人たちに刻まれている若者の街という記号
As for the women, they just don't really seem to have a nickname for it at all. They just got a vibe.
なぜかしら
Why? Well, that has absolutely nothing to do with me.
ファッションの街だからお店がたくさんあるから流行の発信者からよくテレビに映るから交通の便がいいから
Fessimar.
違うわドリ
The two Fesses paused for a moment. Being watched from both in front and behind started to make me feel uncomfortable.
大いなる意志CoZ存在もっとわかりやすく言う神による意志な
That's what Senna was talking about. This is bad. My rational side warned me. Could this be... Maybe she was trying to recruit me into some sketchy religious cult. I began to feel uneasy. Man, maybe I should just get the heck out of here. But upon hearing the next thing Fess said to me, I realized I no longer had that option.
理想度もまたその意志による導き
Whoosh! Back to Bon and Suo. I'm sure you've heard of it. And Ace is on low, gonna be having aneurysms from this. Bond returned to the oh, sorry. Sorry, I was stuck in Takumi mode. Bond returned to the main street from the alleyway. and then began walking towards Shibuya Station. Suwa, who now assumed they were going to Shinsen, chased after his senior detective with an obvious frown on his face. That doesn't look like a frown. Oh, oops. Law of universal gravitation. A law discovered by Isaac Newton, stating that all matter, energy, and anything that has mass has a force that attracts other things with mass. The force of attraction becomes stronger the heavier the two selections of matter are, and it becomes weaker the greater the distance is between them. The law also applies to the gravitational force exhibited by Earth and other planets. There's a famous story which claims Isaac Newton discovered universal gravitation when he saw an apple fall from a tree, but it is no more than a myth. I know. I watched Isaac Newton his entire life. He's never seen an apple fall from a tree. Suwa grew discouraged. Damn it! Oh man. Am I Takumi? Is Takumi me? Who is the real Swanima? Suwa grew discouraged in response to Bond's slightly mocking tone.
あいにく大学じゃオカルトは勉強しなかったっすけどね。オカルトじゃねえ。世界には引力がアンバランス化してる地域ってのが何か所かある。アンバランス化振り子が楕円を描いたのもその影響ってこと。G レートって呼ぶらしい。G レート。ああ、正式名称は何だっつってたかな。グルバケーション、グラリッシュ、
Gravitation.
引力ならグラビテーションじゃないですか。グラビテーションエラーレート。おお、そうだ。グラビテーションエラーレート。直訳すると万有引力の異常値ですか。物理学の辞典を調べりゃ載ってるはずだぜ。載ってたっすかね。
The GE ray, an imbalance that contradicted the laws of universal gravitation. Discovered by Isaac Newton, the law of universal gravitation is a fundamental force of nature that acts between all forms of energy and matter, i.e. anything that contains mass. It is commonly believed that the great number of strata layered upon the Earth's surface play a large part in this law. A typical example of something that disturbs local areas would be lava beds. This phenomenon can be found at the foot of Mount Fuji, Aokigahara, also known as the Sea of Trees, where there have been several recorded instances of compasses becoming unusable. Isn't Aokigahara the suicide forest? Maybe I'm just mistaken. Studies have shown that fossil beds rich in iron and calcium are another type of stratum in which magnetism is repelled. Adding on to the previous factors, magnetite is believed to have a particularly strong influence on gravity. Magnetite, a type of mineral that is used as a material in magnets. It is black in color, has a metallic luster, and the crystals have an octahedral shape. If magnetite, a naturally occurring magnet with an octahedral crystal structure, were to be found beneath the earth in a quantity large enough to warrant being recognized as a dike, it would be as if the ground itself were a magnet. This would then result in an extremely high chance of the area producing minute gravitational deviations. The GE rate is the measure of the gravitational values in a region in which such values have been distorted by the previously mentioned geological strata. And when did this become chaos geography? Or is that geology? I honestly don't remember what the difference between geography and geology is. I better look that up later. When Bond's explanation concluded, the two men who had been walking the entire time were just exiting onto Dogenzaka. The scenery surrounding them instantly turned bright and dazzling.
渋谷の平均 GE レートは世界でもトップクラスらしいぜ。地面に置いたボールが一人でに坂を登っていくようなケースもあるらしい。
マジっすか？
Cap. Suba, who had been listening in utter silence until now, showed his surprise with a slightly exaggerated tone.
まるで SF 映画の世界っすね。
お前の好きだな。
自分は小難しいの嫌いっすよ。壮大なスケールの映画がいいっす。
知らねえよ。
先輩の
Greek
説明は
tragedies.
もっともらしいっすけど、なかなか信じられないっすよ。GE レートなんて聞いたこともないっすし。
Nor me, Suba.
てめえの無知を一般論として語るな。デカに必要なのは事実を客観視することだ。
A gumshoe, you say?
はあ。でも。
What Suwa said was equally true. The research into the GE rate was minimal, and it certainly was not something that would be taught to an everyday college student. Bond himself had not even been aware of it until a few days ago.
そもそもまだ肝心の答えを聞いてないっすよ。渋谷の重力がアンバランスだとなんで若者が引きつけられるんですか？
引力と人間ってのは意外と因果関係があるってことだ。お前、生き物のバイオリズムは月の引力に関係してるっての知ってたか？潮の満ち引きだけじゃねえんだぜ。
ウミガメの産卵には月の影響があるらしいってのはどっかで耳にしたことがある。
ああ、必ず満月の夜に産卵するってやつだな。
I think I also recall reading something about the moon having an effect on people's moods.
だがウミガメだけじゃねえ。他に有名なのだとサンゴが産卵するのも満月の夜だ。
海の中が雪降ってるみたいになるやつですね。
満月の夜は引力も強くなってるって科学的に実証されてんだ。当然人間にもその影響は及んでる。
And better make sure not to do high jumps, or what was it called? Pole jumps, maybe? Well, any kind of sport that involves jumping. Better not do it on a full moon.
人の出産にもってことですか？
出産だけじゃねえよ。バイオリズムって言ったろ。普通の生理現象はもちろん交通事故や事件、病気、食欲とか性欲とかにも密接なつながりがある。興奮すると頭に血が上ってるって言うだろ。
Which head?
あれは月の引力に引っ張られてるんだよ。
Can't believe the moon gives people boners.
そりゃ極論だと思うっすよ。まるで個々の感情なんて関係なくて全部月のせいだって言ってるようなもんじゃないですか。
It's all the moon's fault. Damn you.
そこまでは言わねえんだな。集団心理って言うだろ。この町に来た途端に楽しい気分になったり、ちょっと無茶したくなったりするかもしんねえんじゃないの？ニュージェネの一連の事件に対する反応だったそうだ。 この町でそのニュースを見た連中は大抵反応が同じだ。あいつもこいつも楽しんでやがる。自分だけは被害者にならないって感じだ。対岸の火事を眺めていい気になってる。
そういう集団心理も GE レートのせいってことですか？
可能性としてはありだね。渋谷に来たら楽しい気分になるってのが若いやつらの頭の中で無意識に刷り込まれるんだ。
若者がこの街に惹かれる理由になるってわけですね。
Sua really is a fast learner, Bond thought to himself, impressed. The junior detective was still young, but that part of him truly was worthy of praise. In addition, what set him apart from other young people was that he did not just follow his seniors blindly. Whenever he had a question, or whenever he thought something did not make sense, he would always voice it, despite the fact that he was a junior in name.
GE レートについては一応分かったっすけど、それでどうやって犯人を探すんですか？もし GE レートに影響されて今回みたいな事件が起きたってなら、何百年も前から似たようなことが起きてないと変なんじゃん。
そいつはこれから調べりゃいいさ。専門家だな。
先輩は調べないんですか？
俺はベカだぞ。
Bond smirked from ear to ear.
調べるのはニュージェネのことだけだ。そのために今日はわざわざ仕事サボって現場の GE レートを測ったんだ。もしこれまでの一連の現場の GE レートが異常を示したなら何を意味すると思う？
まさか。
Not quite sure what put this idea in his head to begin with. Like, kinda just seems like completely. I got a feeling he's got another reason for thinking it may have something to do with this, but we'll see. Suwa's eyes went wide, and he stopped dead in his tracks. It seemed as if he had realized what Bond was trying to imply.
事件は GE レートが異常を示している場所で起こるってことですか？だとしたら次の事件が起こる場所をある程度予測できるんですね。
まだそう決まったわけじゃねえ。それをこれから調べんだ。
There was something lurking within this city. Something yet unknown, hidden deep beneath its flashy exterior. Perhaps it was akin to Pandora's box, something not meant to be touched by the hands of men. Pandora's box, a box given to mankind by the gods in Greek mythology. The people were told never to open it, but a woman named Pandora gave in to her curiosity and opened it anyways, unleashing the many calamities held inside upon the world. It is said that the only thing left remaining in the box was hope. So was hope a calamity or something? Also, is it really Pandora's box if it belonged to the gods? Thoughts such as these pervaded Bond's mind as he watched the pedestrians file down the streets of Shibuya. And back to the tunnel. As soon as I heard those words, I knew I couldn't take it anymore. Thess had been going on and on about all these things I didn't care about, all while continuing to dodge what I'd actually asked her. I couldn't possibly care any less about some greater will, or why Shibuya attracts young people, or whatever else. There was only one thing I wanted to know.
ディソードはどうすれば手に入る？
Mustering up my courage, I asked Fess that question.
教えてよ！
Without changing her aloof expression, Fess gazed down at the D-sword she was holding. Despite how gigantic the sword was, she seemed to be handling it with incredible ease. Maybe she just had an absurd level of physical strength or something. High muscle density. That's usually the excuse.
教えられることじゃないわ。
なんで
Why is it that you'll go on and on about all this random shit? You still can't tell me the most crucial thing I need to know.
見つけなくちゃいけない。自分自身の方法なんて私にもわからない。
You don't know? Then how in the living fuck did you get that D sword you're holding in your hand right now?
ただ、理想度は力を持つ人のみにしか映せない。
So, in other words, those without the power couldn't see them. But I could see it extremely clearly. But then, what did she mean by the power? Was she saying that I had supernatural powers? Like what the two faces in front of me had?
君には私の剣が見えているでしょ。それが意味するの。一つだけ。
Shogun and Yua were destroying my life because of it. That I didn't want this stupid bullshit power. But I still did want a D-sword. Because it'd grant me salvation. Thus it said so. Stuff like the greater will and the reason why Shibuya attracted young people made no difference to me. I didn't want some random power, nor did I want to be roped into all this BS in any way, shape, or form. But in order to escape the clutches of Shogun and Yua, I had to get my hands on a sword.
感じて世界を選択した意志。
But Fess's answer was just as ambiguous as every other damn thing she said. Biting my lip, I tried desperately to think of any way I could extract information from her. But as a person who was terrible at talking to 3D people, I couldn't think of anything that'd be effective at all. I tried to pull from my bank of eroge situations, but everything that came to mind was fairly unsettling, such as slipping her an aphrodisiac, tying her up, imprisoning her. Man, I may or may not be extremely fucked up. You don't say!
君、名前は
Thess turned her back to me, and slowly began to walk deeper into the tunnel.
私は岸本綾瀬。
When she said that, I realized that we still hadn't introduced ourselves to each other yet.
西条匠
I couldn't see Thess, Ayase's expression from where I was. Why was she laughing? Why she was laughing, I didn't know.
また会いましょう。匠。
Ayase was moving farther and farther away. I fearfully turned my head to see what happened to the other Ayase, only to find out that she had disappeared without a trace. Had she literally disappeared? Or had she just walked out of the underpass? Ayase had said that the other Ayase was a delusion. Maybe that was the power of the D-sword. We still don't even know what the D-sword is for. Like, what are we fighting? I returned my gaze to the inside of the underpass, and right as I did, I saw that Ayase was going up the other staircase, which was about 50 meters deeper into the tunnel. Eventually, her figure disappeared completely, and now all that remained was the eerie silence of the underpass. I wasn't brave enough to yell after her. I was too exhausted to run after her, and I was overwhelmed with the feeling that it wasn't worth the trouble. In the end, All I could do was return home as cautiously as I could, making sure not to be spotted by Yua or the police on the way. It felt like it had been ages since I was last in my base, but in reality, it had only been half a day. I'd left my computer on, leaving my Seraton screensaver to cast a pale light, together with her smile across the dark room. I locked the door tightly from the inside and threw myself onto the sofa. When I closed my eyes, I couldn't help but remember everything that happened today. I couldn't believe even the police thought I was the culprit. They had it all wrong. There was absolutely no way I could have killed all those people. Investigate like you actually give a shit. This isn't a game. Otaku freaks like myself were ostracized by society, so they must have thought that they could just pin the crime on one of us and the public wouldn't even bat an eye. They couldn't actually catch the real culprit, so they wanted to save face by using me as a scapegoat. Damn it. What could I do to clear my name? The scene at that cafe flashed before my eyes, sending a chill down my spine. There existed someone that was even more terrifying than the police. Yua, my enemy. I had been so unbelievably relieved that I hadn't heard anything from her recently. I had been growing more and more confident that she'd never contact me again. But today, I realized that I'd been mistaken. In order to oppose all of them, I needed a D-sword. I glanced at the cheap sword that was leaning against my PC desk. It was a fake. Ayase had said that only people with the power can see them. The day I brought my sword, Nanami had seen me with it. And unlike Ayase and Senna's swords, it didn't glow. Where would a real one be? I had to get my hands on one as soon as possible. If I didn't, I was doomed. Getting wrapped up in something this insane, it sucked so much.
あなたは DID 多重人格なんです。
No, that's not true. Oh my gosh. I suppose it's just possible that they accidentally did the same line over here, but I mean that's literally the line from Star Wars Episode 5. No, that's not true. That's impossible. Search your feelings. You know it to be true. There's no way I could replicate Mark Hamill's scream of no, though. Multiple personality disorders are supposed to be rare in Japan. You've been watching too many goddamn movies, Yua. I don't have multiple personalities. There's no proof of that at all. Woo!
違う。あれは違う。
But that chat log is consistent with what Yua told me.
あんなの捏造だ。証拠にはならない。
But there's no proof that I don't have multiple personalities.
先生は僕を多重人格だなんて診断しなかった。
But that very doctor, Dr. Takashina, is now gone for some unknown reason.
僕が一番よく知ってる。
But I don't actually know myself. I felt chills on the nape of my neck. The usual presence. Someone was watching me. The unknown gaze. Whose eyes are those eyes?
そうだ将軍だあいつが犯人だチャットログにもそう書いてあったじゃないか
I don't know. Doesn't quite seem like he has the physical strength to nail a man to the wall.
ユアは将軍の手下だしニュージェネ事件だって全部将軍が
Everyone's underlings. Everyone! But does Shogun truly exist? Are you sure he isn't just a delusion?
僕はまともだまともなんだそうでしょ
You live in a storage container on your dad's business roof. I clutched my head and shouted to no one in particular. But all I got in reply was...
メールだよボケナス
Sarah. I sluggishly made my way over to the computer and checked my email. The sender was grim. Found something interesting, was the subject line. It was probably just bait, and the contents of the email were meant to fuck with me. I didn't have the energy to deal with him personally right now, so I stuck to just reading the email. Einhar-kun, why haven't you joined the chat room at all lately? You haven't been on ESO either, so I had no choice but to email you. I would have told you to watch this vid because it's seriously fucked. I know what you're thinking. It's probably just Grim fucking with me, but no. It was recorded by the new gen perp. The nets were going absolutely insane over it. Hurry up and watch it before you miss the hype, SMH. The video had been recorded by the new gen culprit. My fingertips on the mouse began to tremble. I couldn't take my eyes off the email. Did that mean the killer was in the video? Who was it? No, was it me? I both wanted to see it and didn't want to at the same time. This was the proof. Proof that I wasn't the killer. Or proof that I was the killer. Which one would it be? I didn't know. It was a gamble. Feeling my heart begin to beat faster and faster, I moved the mouse cursor and hovered over the link. But I couldn't work up the courage to click the URL.
私あなたを助けたい
Shut up! Don't treat me like a criminal! Don't act like you feel sorry for me! I didn't do it! You're the one on the criminal side, Yua! In an intense bit of rage, I clicked on the URL. It was a YouTube video. The word loading appeared in the video window.
僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない
In reality, it only took about 10 seconds for the video to load. But those 10 seconds felt like an eternity to me. Eventually, it finished loading, and the video started to play.
Oh no. Rating 2 stars. I'd sure hope so.
Actually, no, that should be 1 star. It was a video of a very dark place. The background was pitch black. Maybe it was indoors. I leaned my head in close to the monitor, trying my best to parse the information on the screen. It was dark and therefore hard to see, but there were several men and women there. They were all making a ton of noise. Maybe it was because the bitrate was too low, or maybe because the people in the video were too distraught, but I couldn't make out a single thing they were saying. Every once in a while, whenever someone screamed violently, the sound would clip horribly. After watching for a bit longer, I was able to determine that there were 5 people in the video. If you included the cameraman, it would be 6. The cameraman didn't enter the frame at all. Because of how dark it was, the faces of the 5 people were just barely visible. As though to comfort one another, they were caressing each other's heads, patting each other's shoulders, and hugging. I could also hear the high-pitched sobbing of a girl, likely overcome with emotion.
It sounds more like a bunch of kids laughing than despair.
It was definitely bizarre. But how did this video have any connection to New Gen? Was the person filming this really the New Gen culprit? At the very least, I knew I had no memory of recording something like this. And then, after a short while, the camera, or rather, the person holding the camera, began to slowly move forward. The 5 subjects, who were about 5 meters away from the cameraman, gradually grew larger and larger. The picture was fairly grainy. Maybe the original image data was re-encoded at an extremely low bitrate in order to reduce its size. A modern video camera should have a night vision function, so I wondered why the cameraman hadn't made use of it. Could it have been an older camera? As soon as I thought that, the camera suddenly panned to the left and then to the right, showing the surrounding scenery. What I had initially thought was just the pitch-black darkness of a room was actually the night sky. In other words, the video had been recorded outdoors. As for the reason why there wasn't a single building or anything, it was because the video had been taken on the roof of a skyscraper. The 5 people were on the edge of a roof of a very tall building. Right behind them was the ledge, and below that ledge was the glittering nightscape of Shibuya that could only be seen at high altitudes. Finally, I understood. I finally understood what this video was. I finally understood why it was said to have been recorded by the New Gen culprit. A locked room mystery in which a group of 5 men and women jumped from the roof of Cornelius Tower. The sole fact that remained unclear about New Gen was whether or not this specific incident was a murder case or a group suicide. If this video was of the 5 people who jumped to their deaths, then that would mean that there had been a 6th person at the scene when the incident occurred. The 5 people shown in the video hadn't just been making noise for the sake of it. They were all slumped down on the ground, crying and shouting as they huddled together. They all refused to give up, despite the fact that they were fated to die soon. One was shaking their head in denial as they cried. One was clutching their hair tightly as they fell to their knees, their shoulders heaving with each sob. One was pleading with the cameraman as they sobbed, asking why they were doing this. One had already gone mad and was laughing as tears streamed down his face. It was a rabid, violent desire to stay alive. A fervent, intense plea to not die. Disconsolate indignation that screamed, "Why is this happening to us?" Innumerable raw emotions swirled around the group. In a bizarre juxtaposition, the cameraman's voice was never once heard. The cameraman was eerily calm. No matter how much I pleaded with the footage that had been taken nearly a month ago, nothing was going to change. I knew full well that it was meaningless, but I subconsciously screamed at my monitor all the same.
こいつらみんな死にたくなんかないんだぞ。
With no possible way for my words to reach them, the cameraman was holding moved even closer to the 5 people. Terrified, the 5 of them all tried to crawl away, to get away from the camera, but they couldn't. Right behind them was the very edge of the helipad. There was no guardrail of any kind. The 5 of them had nowhere to go. If they moved back even a little bit further, they would all fall. Refusing to heed the 5's pleas for their lives, the cameraman continued to focus solely on filming, as if to agitate the 5 all the more. He had driven them completely to the edge, to the point where they took no further action at all. Then, without any sort of cue, nor any form of signaling one another, the 5 people who had all been crying out in grief suddenly fell silent. Then they all stood up. The wind on the rooftop of the Cornelius Tower was powerful. Beckoned by the wind, the 5 of them nearly staggered. If there was even the slightest misstep, they would fall. As if in preparation for such a thing, the 5 men and women all joined hands, seemingly in resignation. They grasped each other's hands tightly.
よせ。やめろ。謝るな。
Silence. It seemed to me that even the sound of the wind whipping violently through the air had stopped. All I could hear was the sound of cars driving along Shuto Expressway at the foot of the building. Even then, the cameraman did not make a single move. And then, a single person among the 5 whispered.
その目誰の目？
I froze in front of the monitor, feeling as though my heart was being strangled by an ice-cold hand.
なんでまたその言葉なんだよ。
Wasn't this supposed to be the first new-gen case? Whose eyes are those eyes had been the dying message from the vampire case. And that one came forth. This didn't make any goddamn sense. Paying no mind to the screaming inside my head, the video continued to play. Hand in hand, the 5 men and women slowly stepped out into the empty air, almost as if there was a path laid out before them. And then, just like that, the 5 fell into the nightscape of the big city. I bit my lip and covered my eyes. The group dive hadn't been a mass suicide. It, too, was a murder case. The culprit had been there when it had happened. And as for who'd filmed the video, I knew who it was. Mixed in with the sound of the strong wind on the rooftop. Mixed in with the sounds of the 5 people crying out in grief. Mixed in with the blaring horns from Shuto Expressway below. I was certain that I'd heard one particular faint sound. It was the sound of creaking steel. A sound that could only be heard when the cameraman was moving forward. The sound of a wheelchair.
あの時、僕の前に現れたのは現実だったんだね。カメラの目線が低すぎだよ、将軍。
Chapter 4 finished. Chapter 5 Delusion. To no one's surprise, the leaked video of the group dive exploded. Grim had told me that the entire internet was going insane, and lo and behold, he wasn't lying. A huge chunk of that channel is now convinced that all 4 New Gen murders had been committed by the same person. TLDR, net slang, short for too long, didn't read. Typically used to request a short summary of a lengthy post or thread. It can also refer to the summary itself. Whose eyes are those eyes? Is the New Gen killer's signature move. The guy who dubbed it on YouTube has to be the perp. Wait. Whose eyes are those eyes? It's so freaking sweet. Okay, I'll report that immediately. Whoa, whose eyes are... TLDR. Wheat was written out at the scene of the vampire, yeah? That means that there's a connection between the first and last case, despite all the people saying they had nothing to do with each other. Which then means that the man-child and crucifixion cases also have to be connected. Damn, I'm getting way too into this. I seriously need to turn off my mouse when I start recording. Come on. I don't even know how to read that. Whose eyes are those eyes? Also, Wheat's first appearance was at the vampire case, so it couldn't possibly have copied the group dive. No, don't look! Hello? Smoke weed every day. I saw the video, but it looks fake as shit. Some actors just did it for views. I bet 1 perica on it. What the hell is a perica? Oh, okay. Perica, a fictional unit of currency that appears in a certain manga. One Piece, maybe? Sounds like it'd be a One Piece thing. You twats really ought to stop using whose eyes or whatever TF so often. The killer just wants attention and you're giving it to him. The same dude did all the New Gen murders? Whose eyes are those? Eyes! Nah, the tower in that vid's just 2 meters tall. And there's a trampoline or something below it, LMAO. Agreed. If that phrase keeps being a trend, there will be more murders. Y'all need to tone it the fuck down. It's just not it's not just a meme anymore. Whose eyes are those eyes? I live in Shibuya. Obligatory don't look. The Mewtwo video, it's topping the charts! The view count, it's skyrocketing! It's so brutal! Don't look, guys! LMAO! Time to make the MHK News' top report! Woo! Anything from the perp behind Wheat yet? Breaking news taking over every station! Woohoo! Sipto TV though, lol. The news on TV was just as erratic. Like 140 had said, every available TV station, save for Toe TV, had been interrupted by the breaking news, where they'd played the leaked video on loop. The broadcast had lasted for about an hour. It was pretty shocking to see that the footage had actually been broadcast across the entire country. Of course, all the stations censored the part where they dived off the building at the end, but it was still extremely impactful. The opinions of those on TV were more or less the exact same as everyone's online. They all attributed the 4 new gen cases to the same culprit. Then again, that wasn't really much of a surprise. They'd finally found a common denominator between them, after all. Whose eyes are those eyes? It had become a popular phrase all throughout Shibuya. The phrase had first been shown to the world when the details behind the 4th case, the vampire, were shared. People then learned that the victims of the group dive had said it as well, even though it had occurred a month before the vampire case. And the 4 incidents that had occurred so far had been used in both the first and the last one. It had to mean something. It made the theory that a single person was behind the murders all the more probable. The police then held a press conference, stating that they intended to identify the person who'd posted the video as soon as they could. A number of politicians commented that the actions of the culprit were completely deplorable and that they needed to be apprehended immediately. Oh, and, sky's blue. Sky is very blue. Very blue. I think about it. They've mentioned the sky a lot in this for some reason. The YouTube video had been removed by a moderator less than 3 hours after it was uploaded, but by then, it was too late. They uploaded it to Dive Leak. That channel had already gotten their hands on it. And from there, nothing could have stopped it from being re-uploaded and spreading like wildfire. And then, just before midnight, the following facts had been revealed through a police statement. The group dive video was uploaded from a computer located in the Shibuya manga cafe, known as @Cafe. It was uploaded from a specific private room in the facility, room number 37. Oh. And what time? Okay, I guess we're just not gonna say the time. I still think it's you, glasses girl. Girl C. Actually, maybe girl G is better for you because you're the glasses girl. I see you. My eyes are on you more than whatever the heck's looking at talking me, which may also be me, but yep. I sat paralyzed in my seat, my head hanging low as I hugged myself tightly. Without realizing it, I had started eavesdropping. I was becoming hypersensitive to the voices coming from my surroundings. I overheard a lot of conversations, and, unsurprisingly, the group dive video was the topic on everyone's minds. Some girls were even jokingly saying to each other, "Whose eyes are those eyes?" I bit my lip and let my gaze wander onto the surface of my desk. That video was evidence. Evidence that Shogun actually existed. Evidence that I hadn't killed anyone. It proved that I didn't have multiple personalities. That the old-looking man in a wheelchair was the new gen killer. But why would Shogun even upload it? Why would he hint at himself being the killer when the culprit's identity had been shrouded in mystery so far? Only 2 explanations made sense to me. 1. Shogun was showing off by killing people because it amused him, which was pretty likely considering that time when he'd appeared in front of me. Or he was trying to provoke me. For some reason, Shogun and his underling Yua were doing everything in their power to fuck with me. I didn't know the reason why. I just knew that they were trying to frame me as the new gen culprit. At this point, even the police were probably suspicious of me. Shogun was trying to corner me.
僕のメッセージは受け取ってくれた。目覚めるんだ。早く。
There's a very weirdly young sounding voice for a guy that looks like him.
でないと、もっとたくさんの人が死んじゃうことになるから。忘れないで。君は逃げちゃいけない。
When he'd appeared in front of me, that was what he'd said. It felt like he'd been trying to intimidate me. And that he was basically saying, I'm going to kill you too. Don't you dare run away. And now, he totally blindsided me by uploading that video and making sure that it spread all throughout Japan. There's no doubt that Shogun had moved his plan to the next phase. It'd been naive of me to think that I wasn't being targeted anymore. If anything, it'd be more accurate to say that his plotting against me had moved from passive to active. It was now finally in full swing. I was terrified, especially of that video. Shogun had killed 5 high schoolers without even lifting a finger, despite being worse off physically than me. If all the new gen cases were actually his doing, then all those other gruesome murders, the man-child, crucifixion, and vampire, had all been enacted by that very same frail body. Or maybe Yua had helped him out. In any case, I didn't have any faith that I'd be able to defend myself against people who'd commit such horrible atrocities.
So, I'm thinking more about it, and I'm starting to wonder if, reality as Takumi currently perceives it isn't exactly real. Like, there's some realism to it, but, it may not just be outright, they're in a simulation, but, I don't know, something's going on. Like, from what I can tell, I think most likely Shogun is somehow, controlling people. Well, it may not be Shogun himself, for all I know, but, I think the killer is somehow controlling people. And, when Rimi was nailing that guy up to that wall, assuming it was her, it's possible that she was being controlled too, and she could only really passively resist, perhaps. But yeah, that VR stuff has me thinking as well.
Just thinking of them sent chills down my spine. Chills that combined with the red-hot anger I was feeling. Why was I being targeted like this? What did I do to deserve this? And there was also that message. Whose eyes are those eyes? If I wasn't careful, I would start trembling uncontrollably.
Oh yeah, and there's also the whole thing with Takumi constantly contemplating ESO. But, yeah. Could also play into DID somehow.
To keep that under control, I had to keep my body from relaxing. I had to always be aware of my surroundings, and be ready to bolt the second I sensed someone approaching. I didn't know when Shogun or Yua would show themselves again.
I am so sorry I keep yawning these episodes. I don't know what's up with me. Hell, I had no guarantee that Yua was Shogun's only underling. Maybe even my own classmates were under his influence. Their laughter and idle chatter acting as mere camouflage until just the right moment. I had to find a way to parry surprise attacks like the one at Cafe yesterday. If I didn't, I'd be killed next time for sure. I needed to get a D sword ASAP. Sorry about that. The only way out of this was to get a D sword. I'd internalized what Ayase and Sena had said, and I'd searched online about it, and it all had me convinced. Getting my hands on a D sword would save me. The night before, I desperately tried to gather information on D swords while keeping an eye on the new gen shitstorm. My research barely bore any results. I cradled my head, tearing at my greasy hair. I think about it, Takumi hasn't even had the opportunity to take a shower. Man lives in a storage container. How the heck can any girl stand being around such a smelly dude? How was I supposed to find a D sword?
見つけなくちゃいけない。自分自身で。方法なんて私にはわからないわ。
Ayase had said that, but that was barely even a hint. My thoughts weighed heavily on me. I was starting to freak out. My heart was steadily getting crushed by anxiety. I needed to hurry and find a D sword. Whatever it took, I had. I had to find one. If I didn't, I'd be done for. Before becoming New Gen's next victim, I had to find one. But I needed to find out how. I had no clue how you were supposed to get one. I needed some kind of hint. Something, anything. I had to figure it out fast, or I'd lose my chance of finding it. Was I even capable of finding one? This was no time to be at school. It was my own life or graduating. I didn't need to debate which one was more important. And yet, why was I... Sensing someone approaching me, I quickly raised my head and braced myself for contact.
びっくりした。
Rimi was standing there, blinking repeatedly as if she'd been stunned by my sudden movement. I made you jump? Stop scaring me like that. All the stress in my body released at once, and I crumpled on top of my desk with a big sigh.
タク、大丈夫？
Fulfilling her usual quota, Rimi peered into my face. I hurriedly lowered my eyes.
顔、真っ青だよ。汗もすごいし、目も血走っちゃってる。
Was Rimi with me or against me? An ally or an enemy? After she'd saved me, I'd grown a lot less wary of her. But there was still a ton of unanswered questions that I had yet to figure out. Like why she'd been covered in blood at the scene of crucifixion. Or how we were supposed to be such good friends and that we'd been classmates since our first year, yet I had no recollection of it.
タク、体調悪いの？
Mimi tilted her head slightly, a worried expression on her face.
なんでもない。
I turned away from her. I couldn't say it to her face. When the classes for the day finally ended, I felt like every ounce of energy had been drained from my body.
Trying to remember something. What was I thinking? Oh, right.
Even during class, all I'd done was remain on high alert, repeatedly scanning my surroundings. I hadn't slept since yesterday, but staying this vigilant kept me wide awake. The school day felt like an eternity, and the sheer amount of time I'd spent there spent me spiraling into a deep depression. Why is it that the way we perceive time changes depending on our mood? Some say that time flows at a constant rate, but that might not actually be true. The speed of time changes depending on each person's subjective perspective. I've always theorized that it's a conspiracy to homogenize humanity's understanding of the concept of time by implementing units like seconds or hours. Also, that it can deceive people into forgetting that perception of time varies from person to person. And building off that theory, if the length of time is dependent on each person's perception, then conversely, doesn't that mean that the flow of time can be controlled at will? As I thought about that, I remembered Senna talking about controlling other people's wills. And conversely,
生まれながらに目が不自由な人でも目の前にある景色がちゃんと見えるようになる。ビデオカメラのような映像機器を介してな。
Video data from a camera is converted into electrical signals that are sent directly to the brain, causing the person to observe that sequence of images. Conversely, that would mean converting the images that person observes into electrical signals and sending them to equipment that can render video. The aforementioned equipment didn't have to be a video camera either. For example, what would happen if you connected a person to a hard disk recorder and showed them recordings of someone's vacation? What if instead of real-life recordings, you showed them an anime? Technically, anime is 2D, and therefore delusionary. But people who are blind from birth had never seen anything from the 3D world. So if they were shown an anime and told, this is how the world is, then they would believe that the 2D world is reality, right?
Well, unless they watched something like, what's it called? That really crappy 3D anime.
To that person, that delusion would be their reality. A delusion perceived as reality.
Speaking of delusions. Okay, so positive.
Here's another example. If person A sent an image from their brain to a hard disk recorder that processed it and transmitted the image to person B's brain, then person A's delusion would become person B's reality. Delusion becoming reality. In theory, it was possible. Whoops. Holy shit, I was a genius. LMAO. I was over the moon by how brilliant my theory was. Maybe that was how I'd acquired D-Sword. Ayase had said that they had something to do with delusions, hadn't she? Alright. I should hurry up and go home so I can look it up.
Whoosh.
I left the classroom and headed for the school entrance, refusing to let my eyes wander anywhere. As I made my way out, I stuck to my usual routine, walking as close to the wall as I could, all while keeping my head low so I that I wouldn't stand out. The final bell had already rung a little bit ago, so the students on cleaning duty or doing club shit was still around. Basically everyone who'd opted to go straight home already had. School always felt somewhat lonely, or even wistful after the final bell rang. No matter where I went, it always felt that way. Whether they were ancient buildings made out of wood, or newer structures like Swanima. Well, not that I'd ever set foot in any wooden school buildings in anything other than a rogue. As I unconsciously walked through the corridor under the setting sun, my mind wandering around all sorts of inconsequential stuff, I spotted a strange figure coming toward me. It was a single girl waddling forward, carrying two large cardboard boxes. I couldn't see her face behind the boxes, and she probably couldn't see a thing in front of her. Someone was asking to eat shit. If this were in a rogue, this scenario would 100% result in us running into each other and me tripping a flag. I thought about attempting to do just that, but concluded that it'd be best to keep it as just a thought, because in reality, I didn't want to actually do it. Instead, my alarm bell started going off. There was a legitimate possibility that she was one of Shogun's assassins. Stay away from her. Be extremely careful. I paid careful attention to each of her steps. She kept drawing nearer, sometimes tilting to the left or to the right. I, meanwhile, kept walking along the left wall of the corridor. As the girl started moving to her right, I sped up. We then passed each other without any issues. But right then, I heard something fall, and I quickly turned my gaze downward without even thinking. Someone had dropped their student handbook. I stopped in my tracks. Had the girl with the boxes dropped it? As I stared at the student handbook, my thoughts began to wander. Doubt arose in my mind. Why had that student handbook fallen at that exact moment? It was way too conspicuous. It was practically begging to get picked up. Was it a trap? Had she dropped it on purpose? The girl had been carrying boxes with both hands. Her hands were occupied. If the student handbook had been in her skirt pocket, it would have been entirely impossible for her to take it out and drop it. However, I hadn't seen where it had fallen from. Maybe the girl had been holding it from the very beginning, hiding it beneath the boxes. I wasn't sure. It might not have been on purpose. The more realistic option was that it was just a coincidence. I followed the girl's figure with my eyes, or tried to anyway. At that precise moment, the girl took a turn down the hall and disappeared. I had only seen her for a split second. She hadn't looked like someone I knew. Her hair had been short, I think. No, maybe it had been long, actually. I couldn't say for sure which. Naturally, I hadn't seen her face either. When I'd passed her, it had been hidden behind the boxes. The student handbook and I were now all alone in the hallway. The sensible options probably were to either pick it up and deliver it to the staff room, or rush after the girl and ask her about it, but I was hesitant to carry out either. I'd looked around me. There were no other students in sight. I could somewhat make out the sound of girls laughing happily in the distance. It probably wasn't a trap. The handbook's owner had already left. How could this possibly end up being a trap? Could there be a small bomb inside the handbook? No, that was way too unrealistic. I don't know, man. You could get a lot of use out of small portable bombs, like put them in someone's food, for example. If I picked up the handbook right at that moment, nothing would happen. Yeah, nothing was going to happen. Just in case, I should probably check the handbook to see who the girl was. She could have been one of Shogun's underlings. I should check her name, class, and photo, then leave the handbook here. It couldn't be fucked to go after her and give it back. Nevertheless, I still carefully scanned the area just to make sure no one was around. Then, after I made sure I was alone, I picked up the handbook and casually opened it to the first page. Whose eyes are those eyes? Emoticon. I hurriedly threw the handbook away. What was that? I've never been so creeped out before. It was so unbelievably eerie. It didn't just scare me. I felt sick to my stomach. This was very clearly malicious, blatant harassment aimed specifically at me. Who would go so far as to do this? Wait, of course, it had to be the girl from before. That girl actually was Shogun's underling. She had to be. I'd only glanced at the student handbook, but all the information that should have been on the first page, such as the name, the birthday, and the class, was blacked out. In addition, the portrait that should have been attached had been removed. I felt like I was gonna puke. I was hit with an intense wave of nausea. I wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. Covering my mouth, I moved toward the stairs. I ran through the courtyard with no real destination in mind, until I could no longer hold back the urge to vomit. Ugh. The second I fell to my knees, the entire contents of my stomach began spilling out. Lord. The stomach acid made my throat burn. My vision blurred from tears. It was hard to breathe. The aftertaste was absolutely vile. I must have been way more max than I thought I was. It might have been because of the all-nighter I pulled. As I wiped the corners of my mouth, I looked around me restlessly, but I couldn't see a soul. However, the shadowy corners and the blind spots I'd never usually pay attention to had become terrifying to me. I began to think that Yua and Shogun might be hiding in them. The second my brain came up with that, I could no longer take a single step. Someone save me. Dasukite. I wanted to cry. I felt nauseous all over again. I didn't end up vomiting, but I dry heaved several times. The pain made me cry even harder. I was nearly sobbing at this point. But then, suddenly, someone's hand began to gently rub my back. Terrified, I turned around. Hello, Rimi. Rimi was there.
大丈夫だよ。
I wasn't being condemned for feeling this way. No. Her words were a tender affirmation.
私はタクの味方だから。
She didn't even so much as grimace at the smell of my vomit. She didn't show any signs of disdain when she saw my face covered in tears and once, not nor when she saw the vomit still clinging to the corners of my mouth. She simply gave me a gentle smile, reassuring me that it would all be okay. She drew closer to me. She continued rubbing my back, gently. Why was it that before, and even now, every time I thought I needed to be saved, Remy would always heroically appear in front of me? Right now, Remy was right here. It reassured me. I felt better. Before I even realized what was happening, my true feelings began to pour out. Despite the fact that I never talked about myself.
助けて。一人は怖いんだ。
Maybe that was why I bothered coming to school. Up until now, I always thought I'd be way better off alone. Of course, even now, it was still terrifying to talk to others. I wasn't at all confident in my ability to actually talk to anyone, but with Shogun and Yua trying to destroy my life, I've never been so anxious, scared, and alone. I want someone to be there for me. They didn't even need to be nice to me. I just wanted someone to be present.
一人は怖い。
だったら私が一緒にいてあげる。
Those words held no ill will, no hesitation, no irresolution.
さすがに24時間ずっとは無理だけど。
Her shy gaze moved up toward the sky. Her eyes were looking so far away. Just what could she be looking at in that sky?
朝一緒に学校行って、学校では休み時間にどうでもいいこと話して、お昼休みは一緒にご飯食べて、夕方一緒に帰って、帰るついでにたまにどこかのお店に寄ったりして、タクの部屋でちょっとだけおしゃべりして、それでまた明日ねって手を振って別れて、そんなのでいいなら私いくらでもしてあげるよ。
Aww. Aww. That that just escaped me somehow. I have a weird habit of just making some kind of noise when I think something is just so cute. So cute. Oh. Okay, smile. Leave my face. I need to voice act.
そういうの結構憧れなんだ。
Wasn't that kind of almost like being in a relationship? I was stunned. She was completely serious. I could see it on her face.
どうしてどうしてそこまでしてくれるの？
それは
Because a flag, if I'd ever seen one, right? Because I love you, Taku. I could see it coming from a mile away. That had to be what she was gonna say, right? Granted, I had no clue why Remy would have fallen for me. No, wait, the shit had to be bait. Something similar had happened before. With Yua. With her, it had all been nothing more than deception, ending with me drowning in the depths of despair. So I couldn't get my hopes up. I had to prepare for the worst. It was possible that Remy, too, Wasn't in it.
石
She suddenly saluted me. I was taken aback by the suddenness of it. My mind shot to the possibility that she was about to reveal her true self. And yet, all that I saw in Rimi's face was that same bright, gentle smile.
そんなの友達だからに決まってるでしょ
Oh.
私にしてみればタクを助けてあげるのは当然なのどうしてとか寂しいこと言わないわかった
Because we were friends. If she'd said, because I love you, Taku, and this is how I'm gonna show it, it would have felt like my life had begun anew. But even if we'd be friends, that alone made me incredibly happy. Having someone be kind to me, having someone do things for me without expecting anything in return. I can't believe how happy it made me. It might have been the very first time I had ever felt like that. But above all else, it made me realize that I wasn't alone. To me, Mimi's existence was my salvation. The nausea I had felt earlier had finally subsided. And I was feeling much better.
はい使う
Mimi held out a vermilion handkerchief. It had a faint floral scent. I meekly accepted it, but I was hesitant to use it.
汚しちゃっていいよ
You finally used it.
タクにあげる
ありがとう
I felt guilty about it, but I ultimately decided that I would accept your generosity. I wiped off the vomit that had stained the corners of my mouth with the handkerchief. It was the first time I had ever received a present from a girl that wasn't a family member. I wasn't so sure about calling it a present, though. To me, someone who was so isolated and helpless, even a simple thing like this felt like an irreplaceable treasure to me. I felt so delighted, so relieved, that I nearly started to cry all over again.
それじゃあ帰ろっか
Her voice was so carefree.
一緒に
Apparently, she had already intended to make good on what she'd said before. And she'd stay by my side. Not that I told her whether I wanted her to or yet. Or not yet. But it wasn't like I had any intention of saying no. Being alone terrified me. I didn't want to be alone. As I was now, I had no one to rely on but Rimi. However, I still couldn't say that I was stable now, even with Rimi with me. On the way back, I chose to take a different route than usual, walking cautiously all the way. I couldn't stop trembling. Every corner with even an inch of shadow seemed dangerous. Every time I got to any kind of intersection, I was tormented by delusions of Yua or Shogun waiting for me at the end of it, making me freeze in place. Whenever that happened, Mimi would take over. She would look over toward the end of the intersecting road, and when the coast was clear, she'd nod to me.
大丈夫誰もいないよ
This isn't gonna be some shit like Rimi is Takami's altar or something, is it? Oh no. Oh no, I thought about that more. Oh no. Oh no.
Relieved, I followed after her.
I ain't gonna jump to conclusions, just putting it out there. I've considered that as a possibility.
Everything she'd done without even a hint of irritation.
ねえ、聞いていいかな。一体何があったの？
I was slightly hesitant to tell her. If I said something here, Rimi could become a target for Shogun. I would get her involved.
話したくないなら無理に話さなくても。
いや、話すよ。
My mouth had already started moving. I definitely didn't feel comfortable with the prospect of getting her involved. But if I didn't explain to her what was happening here, she wouldn't be able to understand the gravity of the situation. For the sake of my well-being, I had to turn a blind eye to the possibility that it might put her in danger. She'd been the one who said she'd stay by my side, so I was sure she'd be fine with it. So I told her everything. I told her that Shogun was the actual new-gen culprit, that Yuo was one of his underlings, that they were both stalking me. What happened in front of 107 the other day. I laid it all bare, albeit not without a fair share of stuttering. The Takumi classic. When I told her about the time Shogun appeared before me in a wheelchair, Rimi's lips pursed, and she began to ponder. I had always wanted to ask her about back then. Seemed like now was as good a time as any.
いたかな、車椅子のおじいさんなんて。
She certainly didn't sound like she had.
思い出して。大切なことだ。
でも
Rimi frowned, almost like she was hesitant to say what was on her mind.
そもそもあの時渋谷の駅前が無人だったなんてことなかったよ。いつもと同じだった。
So that was what Rimi had seen back then. I was hoping that she and I would agree on what we'd seen, but I guess not. Rimi, or me, which one of us had seen what the area was actually supposed to look like? What? Oh, sorry, I was overthinking it because of what I said earlier. Had I been wrong about what I'd seen after all? Had that empty Shibuya been nothing more than a delusion of mine? But if it was, then there was a small discrepancy. An old man had appeared in that empty Shibuya. Shogun. What was the explanation for that? If the Shibuya being empty part was a delusion, then Shogun could be a delusion as well.
駅前って人が多いでしょ。だから車椅子の人がいてもなかなか気がつかないだろうし。要するに見てないってこと。ごめんね、役に立てなくて。
At the very least, I knew Shogun himself wasn't a delusion. At first, I thought he was just a delusion. But ever since the group dive video had come out, my perception of him had swapped to the exact opposite. Shogun was real. He existed in reality. But that empty Shibuya, meanwhile, it could have been just a delusion. And in reality, the front of the station had been overflowing with people, just like it always was. I was the only one who'd observed something different. A different set of scenery than everyone else. But how could that be possible?
ねえ、それよりお願いがあるんだけど、いい？
Mimi joined her hands together in a prayer-like gesture.
CD を買いに行きたいんだ。せっかくここまで来てからちょっと寄っていきたいんだけど、いいかな？
I really wanted to get back to my base as soon as possible. The reason I'd taken such a long detour was because I was afraid of the possibility that Yua, or Shogun, might have been ready to ambush me. It wasn't so I could go on some shopping spree. But if I were to refuse after all that, she might end up going back on her promise to stay by my side. If I were to fuck up badly enough, she could get angry and leave by herself. What the hell should I do? This sucked. I needed Rimi to stay with me. I wasn't sure I could make it to my base alone. In the end, I wasn't able to refuse. So I did what I had to do in order to survive and stuck as close as possible to her. I guess it was reasonable to think that Yua wouldn't attack me in a public place like this. But I was more afraid that they might have been hiding among the crowd. Every time I would almost bump into someone, I would scream inside my head.
パトカーだ。
Rimi's words frightened me. I quickly retreated behind her.
Protect Shibuya from terrorists. Drive the devil out of Shibuya. Whose eyes are those eyes? Not my Shibuya. Let's protect our city. Not my Shibuya, not my Shibuya. Expel the demons of this place. Shibuya in flames. Oust the criminal for a safer city.
Mimi was right. There were 2 police cars parked on the road. Right next to them were 3 police officers in uniform. The police had also been pursuing me. Obviously, the basis behind it was a completely false accusation, but the incompetent police didn't know that. Those cops might have been searching for me too. Or so I thought, but that apparently wasn't the case. The cops' gazes were fixated on the crowd of people marching down the street like they owned it. Were they protesters or something? They were carrying these giant signs and flags, and they were wearing the typical sashes and headbands you'd see among those kinds of people. There was a child marching along it with his parents, holding hands with both of them. He looked like he had no idea where he was, and he was wearing a t-shirt with the words, "Whose eyes are those eyes?" written on it in permanent marker. I bit my lip.
何のデモだろうね。
The people marching were of all ages and genders. Their march was mostly silent and solemn, but at times they all echoed their chants. Drive the devil out of Shibuya. Expel his demons from this place.
悪魔
On the signs were a number of different things, such as drive the devil out of town, or protect Shibuya from terrorists. It must have been some kind of protest against the New Gen incidents. There was no point in protesting against that. If they had the time to do that, then could they please just hunt down Shogun and kill him? Then I wouldn't need to worry about him anymore.
タク、行こう。
Clearly uninterested, Rimi turned her gaze away from the protesters and quickly started walking toward the entrance to the CD shop. As soon as we entered the shop, Rimi headed straight toward the indie section. Unlike the J-pop section, there weren't many customers there. Rimi stopped in front of the shelf P and started looking for the CD she wanted. But after a minute of browsing, her shoulders slumped.
やっぱりないな。
An indie group whose name started with P. Could that be...
タクはファンタズムってバンドを知ってる？今話題になってるけど。
So it was them. How could I not know them? I'd even gone to see their concert, and I owned a CD. I nodded, and Remy smiled.
私そういう情報は結構疎くて最近になって知ったんだ。それで友達に借りようかと思ったんだけどなかなか手に入らないらしくて誰も持ってないんだよ。だから CD 買うしかないかなって思ってここ1週間ぐらいあちこち探してみたんだけどどこも売り切れ中。次はいつ入るんだろう。
僕持ってる。
Remy's eyes went wide.
持ってるって CD？
I showed her a nod, and when I did that, Remy... Delusion time! Okay. So, this is negative. In fact, none of the ones for this chapter are positive. Sorry, just pulling something up here. Give me a sec. Okay. Okay, I'm back. So, negative. Huh. She suddenly brought her face in closer to mine, which immediately made me flustered. The sweet smell of shampoo wafting from Remy's hair tickled my nose, and I felt my face turning red.
ねえタク取引しよう。
And I also saw everything else turning red.
A deal.
その CD 貸してくれたら見返りに私
She looked at me, her expression dead serious. I gulped. She'll what? What was she going to do? Whoosh!
叩き割ってあげる。
What?
はい。
Destroy it? Destroy what? It came out of nowhere. I never would have thought Remy was the type to act like such a doku. Despite my confusion, Remy continued to talk very seriously.
その CD を持ってる人は呪われちゃうの。タク知らなかったでしょ。私の調べた情報によるとね、ニュージャネの被害者はみんなその CD を買った人なの。フェスの予言は CD を買った人にだけ当てはまる。フェスの呪いなの。
Couldn't be.
ニュージェネ事件は全部フェスの仕業。急がないと次に死ぬのはタクだよ。
What in God's name was that?
Suddenly, I came back to myself. Remy was waving her hand in front of my face, her eyebrows furrowed in confusion.
どうしたの？急に意識がどこかに飛んじゃってたみたいだけど。
あ、いや、なんでも。
What was up with that delusion? It felt like I was gonna piss myself.
その調子だと話聞いてなかったでしょ。じゃあもう一回言うけど、私のお気に入り CD を貸すっていうので手を打ってくれないかな。
は？
ねえねえ、いいでしょ？お願いします。この通り。
あ、
Life was a cruel mistress. But I suppose it was my fault for expecting anything. When I agreed to Remy's proposal, she delightedly struck a victory pose. With say it was so amusing to me that, despite the critical situation I was in, I couldn't help but laugh. I managed to make it back to the base safely. Thanks to Remy, of course. One thing ended up catching me off guard, though. When we arrived, I'd asked her to wait outside while I cleaned my room, but she flat out refused.
だって前に来た時に汚いっていうのはよーくわかったし、今さら片付けたって無駄だよ。かっこつけなくてもいいって、私とタクの中でしょ？ね？
Aw. Yeah, but I wish I knew exactly what that meant. Remy was completely absent from my memory, meaning I didn't really know her. Every once in a while, I'd find myself taken aback at how ridiculously friendly Remy was whenever she talked to me. It wasn't unpleasant or anything, but it only made it all the more clear how different we felt about each other. On that particular note, was Remy serious about there being no point in me cleaning my room? The floor was littered with empty box lunches, and the bed was piled high with eroge cases. Eroge cases with not exactly the most SFW cover art. Either Remy had nerves of steel, or she had no reason to feel on edge around me. But trying to figure out which one it was only made me feel even more confused. Remy, unaware of how distressed I was, went to sit on the sofa, looking earnestly over the lyric booklet included in the Phantasm CD. I plopped down in my chair, and the tension flooding my body left soon after. My mind was completely maxed after spending most of the day terrified, yet I wasn't feeling that exhausted. Maybe thanks to Remy being there.
どうしよっか。
Closing the lyric booklet, Remy stretched her arms out high and sent a smile my way. What should we do? What were we supposed to do? She hadn't come here to hang out or anything. She just wanted me to lend her a CD. She was doing me a favor by staying with me. What the hell were we supposed to actually do? Did we have to do anything? If we were in Noroge, we'd probably jump straight into an H scene, but... Wait, stop. I really shouldn't be thinking about that right now. Even under the best circumstances, it was still a really tense situation, being alone in my room with a 3D girl and all. If I were to have some unwelcome delusions, I might suddenly shoot back to reality and end up saying something weird. Silence. Remy was staring vacantly at the various manga scattered on the floor, and the eroge piled up on the bed. Awkward. I knew that most of the awkwardness would dissipate if I just said something, but the only subjects I could think of were video games and anime. Me too, Takumi. Me too. And I doubted that Remy knew anything about either. Wouldn't it be more logical for Remy to say something? She was the one who'd said she'd stay with me and all. This was gonna be a bad time if she actually expected me to lead the conversation. Jesus Christ, I really did suck with 3D girls. I was grateful to her for staying with me, but I couldn't handle the sheer, unrelenting silence. The fact that the room had barely had any light was also an issue. It gave off the illusion that the room was dark for some lewd reason. Unable to take it anymore, I turned to face my PC. I needed to look up something. I've been thinking about it at school. It might end up giving me a hint as to how I'd get my hands on a D-sword. Is it possible to translate images pictured in the mind to actual images? Using what Senna had told me about VR technology and people being electronic devices as a base, I began researching the subject.
何してるの？
Mimi stood up and approached my desk. Should I explain? But how to go about it? It'd take forever if I told her everything.
ねえねえ、何してるか教えてよ。
Seeing no reaction from me, Rimi poked me in the back with her finger. I couldn't just ignore her, right? Yeah, it'd never be that easy.
君はその妄想が現実になるって信じられる？
As I entered a few keywords into the search bar, I spoke without looking at Rimi. Instead, I pretended I was talking to Seiraton.
妄想が現実に？無理でしょう。もしそれができたら人はとっくに万能になってるよ。
That's a good point, actually. Delusions create a world in which any action, no matter how unrealistic, is possible. If they were to become reality, the unreal would become real. Unreality would become reality.
それがどうしたの？
それに近いシステムがアメリカで特許あるんだ。
へえ、冗談でしょ。
I could feel Rimi's doubtful scoff on my back. So in response, I showed her the image of the patent that Shiho had found for me.
これは？
特許の証拠写真。
本当に？
Rimi leaned forward and brought her face close to the monitor. She was right up next to my face, peering intently at the screen.
私英語って苦手。すごいね、タク。英語読めるなんて。
She was way too close. She was so close. I could see the glittering of her eyes as they reflected the light of the monitor. I got all flustered all over again.
ねえねえ、どういうことか教えてよ。
Seemed it had piqued her interest. I tried to avoid thinking about how close she was to me, and attempted to focus on Seiraton in the monitor instead.
生まれながらに盲目の人でもビデオカメラみたいな映像機器を通すことでそこに映る景色が見えるようになるんだ。これ豆知識な。
ビデオカメラが目の代わりっていうこと？
そう VR 技術って言うんだよ。
へえ、もし本当だったらすごいな。
But it is. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Senna told me that there'd already been successful tests.
でも機械を使って目が見えるようになるのと妄想が現実になるってどうつながるの？私頭悪いからよくわかんないや。
As I explained it to Rimi, I tried searching for a number of keywords that might have been related, but I couldn't find anything. Even so, I kept on trying and typed more and more keywords.
映像機器に映る景色も脳内で思い浮かべた妄想も電気信号だから。逆に考えるんだ。脳内に電気信号を送るんじゃなくて脳内から電気信号を送るって考えるんだ。
ほほう。
All I got were filler responses. She probably didn't understand a thing I was saying. Probably. I couldn't be bothered trying to explain everything in detail, so I just stopped trying. I had to concentrate on my research. It didn't really matter if she understood it or not. After all, it was nothing more than a hypothesis I'd come up with. Mimi was still making noises and nodding to herself. Time to ignore her. I'd been doing a whole lot of searching. I was still unable to find any data to confirm my hypothesis. I tried taking a different approach, this time focusing my research on the patent itself. I went ahead and checked a foreign website that Shio had told me about, one that only listed American patents. Once I was there, I began to look for patents that would fit what I had in mind. After following a few links, I finally found an image with a similar vibe to the one Shio had sent me. At a glance, though, the patent was clearly different from the VR apparatus one. I should read it right away.
神経信号パルスを遠隔地からモニターし、それを映像および音声として再現する装置と方法。
おお。
That was exactly what I had in mind. I involuntarily leapt out of my chair.
これすごいぞ。
すごいの？何が何が？
簡単に言うと、これ他人の思考を盗撮する技術だ。
思考を盗撮。
To sum it up, the audio and video people were imagining in their head could be stolen by using a certain apparatus. Moreover, it was even said that nerve impulses could be monitored from satellites. That meant it was possible to spy on a subject's thoughts, no matter where they were on the planet.
本当にそんなことできるの？ SF 小説とかそういう類のものなんじゃ？
特許ってそのシステム自体が完全に仕上がってないと。
You're in the sci-fi novel, Remy.
絶対に取得できないんだって。
That had been made clear to me when I'd been looking up stuff about patents earlier.
だからこれもちゃんとシステムが確立されてるってことだよ。
This wasn't mere fiction. As long as you had the technological capabilities and the funds to build it, you could implement it anytime. Before, Senna had told me that.
ある意図的な情報を神経パルスへコンバートすることが可能なら、人の五感すべて、さらには人の意志そのものもコントロールできるんじゃないか。
I couldn't find a source for that, so it remained as mere conjecture from her. However, for my own theory, there were sources. Why would something so insane have not spread around all throughout Japan? This clearly deserved a Nobel Prize, if not something even bigger. I continued my research, this time looking up the mind-reading keyword. There, I found a record of a particular lawsuit from America.
また英文だ。頭痛くなってきそうだよ。
It was a really long document, so even I had a hard time reading it. It would probably read poorly, but I decided to use a piece of English to Japanese translation software. The contents of what was written there could be summarized like this. Legal record. Plaintiff, N.K. Rabin. Defendant, the United States Department of Defense, CIA. Plaintiff's allegations. I have become aware that my mind has been read via the use of a peculiar device. My monitored thoughts are then recorded and subsequently transferred to an unknown location using satellites. The aforementioned satellites have taken me hostage. I have been the victim of constant, unending attacks regardless of the time of day, all of which were carried out by those very satellites. 1. Tracking. 2. Mind reading / telepathic surveillance. 3. Monitoring of all body signals. 4. Biorhythmical attacks. 5. Oral attacks. 6. Physical debilitation. Since the latter third of December 1990, I have been forcefully shown artificially created dreams during my sleep, some of which include video, audio, and even voices. From February to May 1992, I have fallen victim to several biorhythmical attacks, all of which serve to torture me via the induction of pain and/or psychological harassment. Recognizing that these attacks were aimed specifically toward myself, beginning February of 1992, I began to record the following information in a journal: the date, time, and contents of any particularly agonizing psychological attack I can remember. The biorhythmical attacks were aimed at every single region of my body. The pain, torture, and psychological harassments were coordinated in order to cause discomfort, fatigue, and agony to specific regions of my body, or in some cases, my entire body. The main regions affected are as follows: chest, visual system, abdomen, brain, to induce sleeping disorders, brain, to show me artificially created dreams.
思考監視、思考盗撮、しかも国家ぐるみ。
Are these the eyes whose eyes are those eyes?
マジ？
あ、私これ知ってる。何年か前に映画で見た。
That was fiction, though. But what was written on these records very much wasn't. There were two possibilities. Either the plaintiff was a total mental case, or the entire thing was factual. It was difficult to figure out where exactly the boundary between the two was. Taking into account the patent from earlier, it could very well be truthful. Susanna and Ayase weren't total mental cases, particularly Ayase. Back then, Ayase had cloned herself right before my very eyes. I hadn't witnessed the exact moment when it had happened. All I knew was that when I turned around, another Ayase was there. She had also shown me how she pulled her D-sword out of thin air. It had been neither a hallucination nor a delusion. After showing me something like that, there was no way I could still label her as a mental case. However, Ayase had also said this. That strange phenomenon. Had it been my delusion coming to fruition?
理想度は力を持つ人のみにしか映らない。君には私の剣が見えているでしょう。それが意味するのは一つだけ。
Maybe that was what Ayase had been talking about when she'd mentioned the power. A power that projected delusions into reality. Maybe I had that power. Speaking of... So I think this one is negative. Let me see. Yeah, negative. No, I was probably just jumping to conclusions. It was a total stretch to think that psychic ability existed just because something, a system using scientific means, was able to reproduce delusions as images.
見つけなくちゃいけない。自分自身で。方法なんて私にもわからないの。
But what if the method to obtain a D-sword was by using such a psychic ability? So, let's suppose I had that ability within me. It might have been worth a try. Leaving Rimi to stare at the PC screen with her eyebrows furrowed, I picked up the toy D-sword sitting in the corner of my room. I went to stand in the center of my room and brought my sword to eye level like I was an ESO character. At that point, I started to feel kind of ridiculous. There was no way a skinny Japanese guy like me would look cool holding such a huge sword. You'd say that, but... It was easy to find pictures of cosplayers doing the same thing online, but the vast majority of them just felt painful to look at. Someone would probably feel the same way about me if they saw me like this. This might have been asking for the impossible. Despite my pessimism, I gave it a try nonetheless. I guess I just need to picture an image of a sword in my head. When the word sword came to mind, I couldn't help but think about ESO. Maybe I should picture something akin to the beautiful, sinister swords that Senna and Ayase had, each complete with a sharpness that could sever anything it touched. I couldn't quite form a clear shape. Maybe it was because I still couldn't gather my thoughts. I needed to focus on either an actual sword from ESO, or a sword like Senna's and Ayase's. If I had to choose between them, I should go for the latter. Alright, let's see where this leads me. While reproducing one as a delusion inside my head, I planted my feet, gritted my teeth, and tried grasping the sword with the power I now held in my hands. I prayed as hard as I could inside my head. Become real.
やめて。
Suddenly, something warm and soft covered one of my hands holding the sword. Startled, I opened my eyes. Rimi had reached out her hand from beside me and grabbed my wrist. Her head hung low. Her eyebrows were furrowed in distress, and her lips trembled slightly. What the? Something was wrong. It felt like she was an entirely different person from the one that had been getting all confused about pants earlier. And what was she telling me to stop? An unpleasant memory flashed through my mind. Yumi was on my side. She was supposed to be. However, I still hadn't solved the mysteries surrounding her. Did Rimi know something about these swords? With a gulp, I nervously called out to her.
タク。
With her eyes cast downward, Rimi opened her mouth. Her voice was stifled, devoid of any and all emotion.
その件だけど。
Rimi was my ally, wasn't she? She wouldn't betray me like Yua did, would she? If even Rimi betrayed me, I'd...
捨てた方がいいと思う。
どうして
My voice nearly cracked. Did Rimi know something after all?
だって
Rimi's gaze finally moved, but this time it landed squarely on my eyes. This is gonna be a fake out, isn't it? I hurriedly averted my eye. What was she going to say?
だってもう高校生だし。
Rimi suddenly broke into a grin, a very mischievous grin. The abrupt change in demeanor left me speechless.
そりゃ男の子っていくつになってもそういうおもちゃが大好きなんだなってのはなんとなくわかるけど、さすがにそんな大きなおもちゃ一人で部屋で振り回してるのはどうかと思うよ。それが許されるのは小学生までじゃない？でもタクの個人的な趣味を私の前で披露してくれたってのはちょっと嬉しいかも。私にだけ秘密を教えてくれたみたいで。
What the hell, man? I got all scared for nothing.
そもそもそれどこで買ってきたの？高かったんじゃない？
1万円渋谷の雑貨屋で。
へえ、1万円か。安いのか高いのかわからないけどでもそんな大きなおもちゃが普通に売ってるんだね。私そんな大きなの直接見たのって初めて。その雑貨屋さんに売ってるっていうのは誰かに教えてもらったの？
She really wasn't gonna let it go. Was she interested in these kind of swords or something? Maybe Rimi was actually a total Chunibyo in disguise. So the one who'd been making fun of me for having a sword actually wanted one herself? Tsundere much. Lol.
自分で調べた。ネットで。
ネットか。すごいな。何でも情報が手に入るんだね。私は全然ダメ。パソコンなんてろくに使えないよ。で、その件って流行ってるの？
なんで？
タクはどうしてそれを買おうと思ったのかなって。
Maybe I should just tell her the truth. If she was going to stay by my side moving forward, maybe she'd end up helping me search for a realty sword in the future. If that was the case, it might be better to just tell her everything now and get it out the way.
これは偽物だけど、本物があるんだ。
本物？
Rimi tilted her head, puzzled.
本物を持ってる人を僕知ってるんだ。2人いる。同じ学校の女子。
女子ね。女の子がこんなおもちゃを欲しがるかな。
本当なんだ。それにおもちゃじゃない。
ああ、ごめん。
本物は光るんだ。それにすごい存在感で。僕それを探してる。それさえ手に入れれば僕は救われるんだ。
救われるって。
Mimi looked quite puzzled, but I was dead serious. Not to mention a D sword would be a powerful tool to confront Shogun.
それで鉄。
I want to say that I needed her help to find it. However, when I thought about what I could even do if she said no, I grew too scared and anxious to say anything. I dropped the fake sword on the spot and sat down on the sofa. With a sigh, I closed my eyes. Would Rimi offer me her help in order to find it? If she did, everything would turn out okay. But I knew how unrealistic it was to expect her to go that far. Up until now, Rimi had always come dashing to my rescue whenever I was in a tough spot. Almost like she could read my mind. In that case, then maybe I...
とにかく、もし本物があったとしても、それこそ買ったりしちゃダメだよ。今タクが持ってるのはおもちゃだからいいけど、本物ってことは銃刀法違反になっちゃうんだから。
My hopes were crushed instantly. What an insane disappointment. And again, Rimi's reactions made sense from the POV of an average person. These past few weeks, I'd encountered so many inexplicable things. I was nearly at the point where I was ready to believe everything that Senna and Ayase had said. Maybe Ayase was right. I had to find a D sword entirely on my own.
それでタク、
I felt Rimi sit down next to me.
その本物の剣を持ってる女子って誰かな？
Her voice came from very close by. She was right next to me. It was just the two of us in an enclosed, dimly lit room. And we were sitting right next to each other. Emergency! Everyone! Battle stations! Emergency!
タクに女子の知り合いが私以外にいたなんてちょっとびっくり。もしかして彼女？
So that's where she was going with this. Could it be Rimi was trying to seduce me? The only possible conversation that could result from this topic was one centered on romance. After I told her the truth, she'd give me her confession, and then the mood would start getting really hot and heavy, and then... Oh, God.
couldn't do this. I wasn't even remotely prepared for this. I opened my eyes and frantically shook my head. But the Ase and Senna were mysterious creatures. Not to mention absolute mental cases. Schizo didn't even begin to describe them. I'd mow-ed over them if they were 2D characters, but I'd never mow-ed over 3D shit. Especially with Senna. Talking to her just scared me. It wouldn't surprise me if violence was just part of her MO. I wanted to stay as far away from her as possible.
そうか。ちょっと安心したかな。
Another delusion! And, this chapter's going by fast. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit! My whole body froze in place. She clearly said that on purpose, right? Was she suddenly hitting on me right now? Judging from the flow of this conversation, there's a good chance Remy had me right where she wanted me. How should I answer? Should I just come out and say exactly what she wanted to hear? Yeah, surely nothing bad could come from that. But I wasn't sure I had the confidence to call out with a real girl. Whoosh! Delusion. I was at a loss about what to do, so I opted to subtly examine Remy's expression. What in the... What? Remy had changed clothes in the blink of an eye. She should have been wearing her uniform, but... There was no way she could have sneakily changed clothes in the short time I had my eyes closed for... Right? I couldn't keep up with such a sudden change.
どうかした？
Remy tilted her head. She didn't say a word about her sudden change of clothes. What was going on? Had Remy not noticed? Or was she just playing dumb? Trying not to ogle her, I looked over her new change of clothes. Was this her casual outfit? As I hadn't seen her in anything but her uniform before, it felt incredibly invigorating. She was wearing both a denim-esque jacket and a miniskirt. The over-the-knee socks she'd been wearing before were gone. Essentially, her bare legs were on display. Here we go. Her thighs were smooth and voluptuous. While she was clearly wearing a miniskirt, she was also hugging her knees as she sat, so... I can see your panties, Sakihata-san. Actually, depending on the angle, it almost looked like she was completely commando. Against my better judgment, my eyes directed themselves toward the V zone of her skirt. I desperately called forth my rational side to suppress my lust. The way she was sitting, it reminded me of the cover of a classic Moe Eroge, titled Free Sister, in the limited edition of its anime adaptation. There was an illustration with the heroine sitting exactly as Remy was now. Think one of those boxes labeled Free Kittens. That illustration was irresistibly moe. I'd even had it as my PC wallpaper for a while. Was this a delusion? An illusion? Or was it legit?
Oh,
God, I couldn't stop thinking about what was underneath Remy's skirt. My
Johnson was starting to make himself very known. Her body had been giving off a nice scent for a while now, and how should I put it? The texture of her skin combined with her amazing figure, it all put 2D to shame. Was this the true power of the third dimension? She seemed very capable of instantly obliterating the values I'd held dear until now. Even though I'd never been into 3D, nor had I ever planned to change that. Even though I had only ever loved 2D characters. Right now, Remy held enough destructive power to fucking obliterate those lofty values with a single strike.
ねえタク
Surprising no one, Remy showed no sign of acknowledging her change in outfit. Instead, just giving me an innocent smile.
私喉乾いてきちゃった。何か飲み物ある？
My sense of reason on the verge of rupture, I took advantage of the opportunity to get up and headed toward the fridge. I peeked inside. I had some half-finished cola, but I drank directly from the bottle, so it probably wouldn't be the best idea to give it to Remy.
ないなら買ってこようかな。コンビニって深センの駅前にあったよね。
I felt Remy stand up behind me.
ちょっと行ってくる。
She gave me a big smile, then left without waiting for my response. Left alone with my thoughts, I began to think. What the hell kind of phenomenon was that? It really had been a delusion. Huh. Remy wearing casual clothes? Ayase splitting in two? What kind of mechanism was capable of reproducing those delusions accurately enough to feel real? Had it even been that, though? Did I have powers or not? And if I did, how could I actively use them? How could I obtain a D-sword? I was still stuck deep in a maze of questions, unable to do anything but wander around aimlessly.
ただいま。
Then Remy, who had only just left, returned. Not only that, but she was wearing her uniform. Now you mean to tell me she'd quickly changed while she was outside? Why would she do that?
私財布持ってくの忘れてた。
Remy didn't seem to notice my bewilderment, and with a strained laugh, she took her wallet from her bag.
レシ。それじゃあ改めて買ってくるね。
And without mentioning her clothing even once, she left the container again. I pressed a finger against my temple and groaned. Someone, please explain that bizarre phenomenon just now. Okay, I need to stop. Yeah, I know. I went on too long. You guys are just gonna have to put up with a 2 hour. Actually, we're approaching 2.5 hours at this point. Y'all are just gonna have to put up with that. I refuse to split in two. I'll try not to make this a regular thing, but like, it only really started getting good when Remy arrived. Beforehand, it didn't really feel like much of anything was happening, so can you really blame me for wanting to go with all this for a while? But, alright. I'll see you guys next time. Looks like we're already halfway through this chapter, maybe? If so, this is a really short one, huh?
Or maybe just playing these over the course of multiple days makes it seem longer than it actually is. I don't know. But, yeah. Have a good one, guys.